Microphone check 1 2, testing 1 2 3. How's my audio? We'll get going here in just a few minutes. Good to see everyone. Alrighty, guys, we are live. Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos, coming to you live from Phoenix, Arizona. Once again, we are diving into the tragic case of Abby and Libby, brutally murdered February 13th in 2017. We're going down quite the rabbit hole today. Good to see everybody. Farmer Mustang, Melissa V, Jill, D, hunker down. V, it's good to see you. Karen DeFranco, hello. Hope you are all well. Stephen Struthers, thank you. We were the same age growing up, and he left on his bike and was never seen again. Oh, you knew David. I thought you were. I thought you knew B. Phillips, or did you know them both? All right. So I think the biggest takeaways, well, that I'm hoping that you guys will take away from today's live stream is one, we don't know the motive, right? We don't know the motive. And two, and don't worry, we're going to dive into all this. And number two, Holman, the lead investigator in the Delphi case, who was also the lead in the Kallenberger case, what I'm going to prove to you today is that Holman, in Kallenberger's case, knew who the killer was right from the beginning. He has all the details. Knows everybody that was involved down to the date. He knows exactly what happened. He even has a witness. He's not a very good witness, or as far as a good character witness, named B. Phillips. He's come forward and said, hey, I know who did it. I was there. I saw the body. I helped load it. So what that tells me is Holman, being the lead investigator of the Delphi case, could very well have had eyes on Richard Allen from day two. You can sit there and say, well, that's not likely. Well, I'm going to prove to you right now that in the case of missing David Kallenberger, Holman, also being the lead investigator on that case, knows exactly what happened. Has a witness by the name of Brian A. Phillips. And I pulled the transcript. He actually came on a live stream, very similar to Julian Powell, Patrick Westfall, people that have just kind of come forward like, hey, I'll talk to you guys. Came on a YouTube channel and spilled the beans. He talks about how he's been interviewed with Holman multiple times, how he's come forward as a witness. He tells the entire story of seeing his friend, or who he thinks is his friend, wrapped up in a tarp with cargo straps, ratchet straps fastened around him. And he even talks about how he helped pick the body up and put it in a trunk. And that he knows eventually it was buried. The person was buried in a garage. So those are the two major takeaways. And throughout this live stream, I'm going to kind of walk you through how I got there. It's kind of an ironic story, really. What's up, KT? How you doing, Farmer? Yep, got you now, Stephen. What do you think about the fact that B. Phillips has come forward and stated that he knows who's responsible for his murder and that he, in fact, is murdered? Do you believe him? Good to see you, Mustang. Jill Moser, how are you? Robin B. Hiawatha says, I think David's wife had something to do with his disappearance. Well, according to B. Phillips, she did. It appears to me that David was trying to get out of town. He knew something was going down. He didn't want anything to do with whatever they had going on. And he may have even been sabotaged to where his motorcycle would break down. Him then needing a ride, calling his wife, who, according to B. Phillips, like, we don't know what happened here. We're not here to accuse anybody. Nothing like that. We're just telling you what this man said on a live stream. He said that David's wife, in fact, was part of the group that set him up and eventually killed him. I think the rumor was they were afraid he was going to tell law enforcement about what they've been up to. According to Brian Phillips here, he was one of the biggest dealers in that area. That he had multiple people he would use in Delphi to move drugs. He never mentions David being one of those people, but David did live in Delphi. I think up until 2009. It could be up to 2014. But the way I stumbled upon David's case had nothing to do with Delphi. I'd never even heard of that case. And we'll get into that here in just a moment. It's kind of an interesting story. Good to see you, Robin. Oh, nice. You're going to have some fun. Yeah, he said he helped load the body. And you know who he's confessing this to live on a YouTube channel? To David's sister. What's her name? I think her name is Kimberly Hansen. And she asks him at one point, and we're going to pull up the transcript. This thing is 2 hours long. We can't read it all, but you can literally type in keywords like Delphi or Holman or anything like that, and it'll just pull up this entire confession about how he was running drugs out of Delphi. And then we're going to have a debate whether or not B. Phillips is even the guy who made this drawing. And I'm going to tell you why I'm almost certain it's him. Hi, Walt. This is Holman is a dirty MFer. I don't care what anyone says. I don't know if that makes him dirty. The problem is you could know exactly what happened and not be able to prove it in court. That doesn't make him dirty. It makes it unfortunate that they can't get the information that they need. I mean, think about it. What information did they even have on Richard Allen that they didn't have on day 3? There's nothing new. The only thing new about Richard Allen was the .40 caliber unspent bullet information being made public. We can sit there and speculate about Keegan Kline and the Wabash River search, but factually, that's the only thing. I don't know, DB. I've heard that before, but I don't think so. I think they're being confused with somebody else, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Mustang says law enforcement knew who the Green River killer was for years. They just didn't have enough evidence to arrest Gary Ridgway. Yeah, who cares what they know? It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. You can't bring somebody to court and be like, yes, judge, this is what happened. She's going to be like, okay, let me see you present your evidence. Well, about that. I don't know, Melissa. I'm pretty sure he may have had access. If his wife is gone, he's at home, his daughter no longer lives with him. Maybe he's accessing her Facebook or some of her old, like an old tablet or phone or something, old computer, laptop. Or even the brother that passed away. I know that they were there occasionally to assist with his mother-in-law. What's up, Stefa? Hope you're having a good day at work. Welcome in. I didn't grab the link, but all you need to type in is David Kallenberger and maybe Brian Phillips, and then the channel will come up. Very interesting. It blew me away. Even the YouTuber, her eyes kind of like got all wide. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. As far as I know, October 14th, I think, somewhere in there. Striations. I mean, think about it. What did they have that they didn't have when they served a search warrant on Richard Allen? Nothing. They already knew that he came forward. They already knew that he was on the trails. They already maybe suspected that the gun would match. Why not arrest him? Well, in the case of David Kallenberger, Holman can't make an arrest either because he can't prove it. And the only witness he has is a dude with a rap sheet a mile long and possibly connected with the Delphi murders. He was scheduled for a jury trial that day at 8 a.m. 2/13/2017. B. Phillips was there to go on trial for his false report. He called in a bomb threat over at the Packers plant because he didn't want to get fired. Pretty sure that was around like May 9th or something like that. 2016. Well, instead of having his jury trial on February 13th, it was canceled. So that means he had some free time. And it was canceled the day of. And interesting enough, while he was out, they after the murders happened, they served a search warrant, or not a search warrant, but a arrest warrant for him. So he was running from the law, and then in comes another bomb threat 11 days after Abby and Libby were murdered on the 22nd. And he turned himself in on the 24th. So let's take a look at this. This is Joe Paul. He's a journalist with WLFI. He posted this to his Twitter. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so this is a post from Joe Paul. I think he's local there to Indiana, right? He says here, prisoner sent me the sketch today of the prime suspect in the deaths of 2 Delphi teenagers. He posted that on March 3rd, but the drawing was completed on February 24th, 2017, just 11 days after the murders. Now, I always found this strange because before anybody was doing their analysis and trying to figure out what was going on in Libby's bridge guy video, he seems to have a whole lot of detail and information put into his drawing here. Like, for instance, what the hell? He's like, yeah, he's able to draw what appears to be a cell phone holder in perfect detail. Look at that. And whatever this is, not quite sure. Some kind of pouch. Face covered. Not quite sure if they're wearing glasses, maybe. Nobody knew that the bridge guy had his face covered like this. Definitely doesn't look like that in the video. But later on, we heard the witnesses say, yeah, he had his lower face covered. And what's with the flames? You know, just a few months before Abby and Libby were murdered, you had the floor fires. And we don't know a motive there. We don't even know who the target was. I think there was, 3 different renters? I'm pretty sure there was at least 2 or 3. Any one of those folks could have been the target. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, if you have Netflix, then you have access to that Down the Hill documentary. It's crazy. Oh, this is the first one? All right. It's pretty interesting. Miss CD Isaac says, can't assume, you have to prove it. Yep. Jose Baez did his job in the Casey Anthony trial. Oh, what a disgusting trial that was. That blew my mind. You could not prove she did it. As mad as we were, yeah, I was pissed. That's the law and truth of it. Yeah, I agree with that. I guess same with the OJ verdict. A lot of people would say the same thing about him. Yeah, so now I know that it's possible that they knew who Richard Allen was from the very beginning. They knew who he was, they knew what his role was, and they knew that the public was not at risk. So to me, that tells me maybe he is just the person, the bridge guy, luring the girls down. But why? What was the motivation? We've did some recent live streams on Keegan Kline and Anthony Schatz. We tried to put that to rest. Even though we couldn't put it to rest, we know that we can't really put it into the scenario anymore. There's just not enough behind it. And we don't know if Kagan's some kind of confidential informant or not. He could be. Then we have the opportunistic, but also sexually motivated, or maybe just for power. We also did a live stream on killer typology, and we've learned that when it comes to staging, sometimes offenders will try to make it appear as a sexually motivated crime, when in fact it was just really no reason, revenge maybe, or a hit. And they'll stage it to appear as if somebody was targeting them for some kind of an opportunistic sexually motivated crime, when in fact it was not. So if we don't know the motivation, we don't know who else was involved, how do we know that this was not a drug-related revenge kill where the killers made it appear as if it was sexually motivated? When in fact the intended target would know exactly why. And that's all that mattered. Mary Nordquist says, "Isn't B. Phillips the bridge guy artist?" Well, I don't know. Maybe we can visit that now. He signs at B. Phillips, 2/24/17. We know he was a prisoner. I'm assuming at least by 24, right? At least by February 24th, he's a prisoner. Well, let's take a look at what was going on with B. Phillips. All right. And I think he was charged with a felony 6 false reporting. So that's some serious shit there. And for whatever reason, they rescheduled the trial. Didn't tell him until the 13th. So if he had anything planned, work or whatever, he's now free to do whatever he wants on February 13th. Now we just need to prove, was he in jail? Right? The Joe Paul says that it was a prisoner who sent him the photograph or the drawing. Well, here we go. The very day that Packers has a bomb threat called on it, February 22nd, guess who turns themselves in? On the 22nd, Mr. Bomb Threat himself turns himself in to police the very day that another bomb threat is called on Packers. And also, there's a news report that Tony Leggett and all of the Delphi investigators who were working the Abby and Libby case were called in, and they took out the contents of somebody's locker. They pulled out a bag. It looks like boots, maybe a hat, and some smaller items, and we'll take a look at that as well. That seems strange, right? Why would they take that out and tell news that it was related? They weren't expecting anything, but yes, it was related to the Delphi case. Is that them telling us that they think that Brian Phillips is somehow related? Because he had that jury trial scheduled for the 13th? His drug connections? So yeah, let's look more at the second bomb threat.
And you can hear that determination in the Indiana State Police officers' voices, saying they're going to do whatever it takes to find the person that took these girls' lives. And as police can.
Okay, so this is what they've taken, the contents of what was removed from the Packers plant. And that's Tony Leggett. He's not there investigating the bomb threat. He's there specifically for the Abby and Libby case. And he has a bag filled with boots and some other items.
Continue to sort through hundreds of tips they're getting on the case. They're also still combing Delphi for evidence. What you're looking at right now is exclusive video of an officer carrying in a pair of men's dark colored boots. Those were analyzed by investigators inside of the police headquarters here in Delphi. Right now, officials tell me they were checking out those boots to see if they were a big piece of evidence. Right now, they don't know exactly what that part of evidence could be in this investigation, but they don't believe it has a lot of evidentiary value at this point. But it just shows you that they're still active.
So they don't think it's going to amount to much, but they're definitely interested. So Mr. Bomb Threat, who had a jury trial scheduled February 13th at 8 a.m., was canceled. Decides to send a local reporter a drawing in detail of the bridge guy, more detail than we've ever seen. 11 days after Abby and Libby were killed, also surrounded in flames. Now, he's wanted by law enforcement. They put a warrant out for his arrest. The same day that he turns himself in, there's another bomb threat called in, and you have Tony Leggett pulling items from the Packers plant and telling local reporters that it's relating to the Delphi case, that they don't expect much. But my point is, why are they so curious about it? Hey, what's up, Beth? Good to see you. Jody Lynn, welcome. Yeah, that's true. The better lawyer you can get, the better you will be off, for sure. 100%. Hey, Troll Shovel.
And out here in the area, FBI officials were actually in this area behind me, in that 40 acres of private property where those girls' bodies were found, still looking for evidence. So even though they took that crime scene tape off the other day, it's still an active investigation out here. So once again, all that we can ask you to do tonight is go to our website, just keep listening to that clip, look at that main suspect's picture, piece it together, and give Abby and Libby the voice that this suspect took away, so we can bring these girls and their family peace and justice. Reporting tonight live in Delphi, I'm Alexis McAdams. Back to you.
Alexis, thank
All right, let me finish playing that. It says suspicious behavior. Let me see how much of this I caught. No, I guess that's number one. But anyway, one of their bullet points up there was suspicious behavior. Number one, cancels plans. Well, guess who canceled their plans on February 13th at 8 a.m.? Mr. B. Phillips. All right, let me pull up this article here. Title, Bomb Threat mentions, oh no, that's not the title. Bomb Threat called in at Indiana Packers in Delphi. Sarah Eisenlin, Pharaoh's Tribune, February 22nd, 2017. Good to see you, Cryptex. Welcome in. Rescue All the Dogs. Good to see you. Welcome in. Granny. Case by Case is the YouTube channel. Okay, yeah. Case by Case. So type in Case by Case, David Kallenberger, and it should pop right up. You might see one or two streams. I think it's the longer one. I mean, it's very possible. because we don't know the motive. We talk about some kind of sexually motivated crime, online crime, catfishing, Keegan Klein, Anthony Schatz, that angle. But we just don't, there's no evidence of that. We can't tie Richard Allen to that, and we know he's the bridge guy, right? Well, we know that McClellan plans to prove that he's the bridge guy. And they have enough evidence of that to keep him in jail for almost 3 years now. Miss CD Isaac says, right. I've heard that Libby's dad was heavy into drugs. I know that there's some reports at about 2014. There were some charges relating to that. And it looks like there may have been some deals that were made. So I think it could be drug related revenge, possibly, that doesn't have anything to do with like Garrett Kurtz and Ashley Garth and that angle, and still be related to drugs and revenge. We can always be half right sometimes, you know what I mean? Welcome in, Angela. Linda's looking. Did you all know that Anthony Greeno is a sketch artist? He is a very good drawer. I am impressed. That was a strange side note. Farmer, offhanded question. I read in 2017 after the murders, some officials put together a task force investigating the safety of the trails. Anyone ever read the results of that report? It doesn't ring any bells for me. Maybe in the chat. Good to see you, Charlotte. Not DB says, if he played any part in the murder and they knew that, they would have arrested him. That's not true. How many times do I got to repeat this? If there's going to be anything you take away from this live stream, it's the fact that Holman, being a lead investigator in the David Kallenberger case, knows exactly who killed him. They have a witness who helped move the body. Has he made an arrest in that case? No. Has he told the family any of this information? No. Has he told the public? No. This happened in 2016, and we know less about that case. Why? Because he can't prove it. Good to see you, Charlotte. No, thanks, V. We have, we're going to go ahead and read the parts of the transcript. Good to see you, Misty. Humanimal, welcome in. Yeah, he has plenty of evidence. But I think that they were hoping to maybe catch the other people. Maybe they were monitoring him this entire time. All I know is for the first time that the unspent bullet casing, the first time that information was made public, it was less than a month later that Richard Allen was arrested. So I have a feeling the cat was out of the bag. But knowing about the David Kallenberger case, that's proof that Holman can have all of the information about the killers, the case, who did it, and not be able to make an arrest. So to say that that couldn't happen with Richard Allen, I just don't agree with you. All right, let's read this here. All right, remember February 22nd, 2017, there's a bomb threat called in again to Indiana Packers. And also that very same day, Brian Phillips, the guy who was known as the 2006 bomb threat guy, proven convicted of it, turns himself in for the very warrant for that same case. The same day there's another bomb threat. Kind of like F you. He's kind of saying F you to the investigators. Well, 2 days later, there's a drawing from an inmate or a prisoner sent to a local journalist in pretty good detail. Actually, you know what? I think I have a video. Let's watch that.
Roads have been reopened in Delphi after Indiana Packers Corporation received a bomb threat. A large portion of US 421 and some county roads were closed for about an hour as law enforcement arrived on scene. Vice President of Corporate Planning Jeff Farrick tells News 18 their switchboard received a call just before 2 o'clock. The Tippecanoe County Bomb Squad, along with several other agencies, were called in to investigate. The plant was evacuated around 2:30. Farrick says they implemented their evacuation plan.
Safety is such an important thing that we thought that this threat was credible, and out of an abundance of caution, we decided to take action at that time and to evacuate our facility.
Investigators were still on scene checking the plant about an hour ago. The roads reopened around 3:30,
Good to see you,
but
Phil.
there was still a heavy amount of semi-traffic in the area.
So what he was ultimately charged with, and that was Brian A. Phillips, appears to be a felony 6, false reporting. So there's proof that he had business that was canceled on the 13th. That was basically what the FBI was telling us at the top of their list of things to find suspicious. Anybody that had plans and they canceled those plans that day. Well, there's Brian Phillips. Another bomb threat's called in the day that he turns himself in. And then you have Tony Leggett and the Delphi team showing up at that call, pulling evidence and telling local reporters that it relates to the Delphi case. Now, remember, when I first heard of Brian Phillips, it was all just a rabbit hill or going down a rabbit hole. You know, we were trying to prove he was the guy who was responsible for creating the B. Phillips sketch. So before we move on to David Kallenberger, let's take a look at this here. Tell me what you guys think. So I pulled this from some of Brian A. Phillips' court documents that are public there on Indiana, my case. And I put a side-by-side of the signature that was found on the BG detailed sketch that was sent by a prisoner signed B. Phillips 11 days after the murders. What do you guys think? Not only what do you think, why? No, we're going to get into that in a minute. Calm down. Yeah, it is, V. What day was BG video released? What date was the B. Phillips pic sent? Well, the B. Phillips sketch looks exactly like one of two images. So I think on the 15th or the 16th, investigators released two screenshots from the video. And his drawing looks a lot like image 2. But what kind of caught my eye was the fact that he was able to determine what those items were. He seemed to know exactly what the bridge guy was wearing and how he looked and what he was using to cover his face and what type of head covering he had, all the way up to the little cell phone holder. And why put the bridge guy in flames like that? I can't help but think of the fluorifiers. I mean, we still don't know a motive in that case. And everybody feels in their gut that they're connected. We know arson is a gateway crime. Just take a deep breath. Yeah, I got to take you down the path that I went down. But we're going to get to that. We're going to spend the last hour talking about Kallenberger, going through this transcript. And I can't wait to hear your guys' response on it. You're going to be shocked. And I'm going to prove to you here that Holman has definitely worked other cases where he knows every detail of what's happened. He just doesn't have any physical evidence. All the way to the point where he knows who killed them, who helped dump the body, the motive. But without witnesses coming forward, oh no, even with a witness, but it just happens to be bomb threat B. Phillips. Kind of hard to put him on the stand. Mr. I was one of the biggest meth dealers in the area. Angela Van Oven says he knows who it is. I think so. He definitely knows who killed Brian. Miss C.D. Isaac says Allen did not act alone. And I think it's possible that law enforcement knows that. Mary says, yes, the detail was pretty amazing for a guy sitting in a cell in another state. Yeah, he would have been in jail for about 2 days at that point. They just can't prove it, Misty. They know who killed Brian. Or excuse me, David. They know who did it. Well, B. Phillips has talked. He's come forward and sat down with Holman multiple times. They even went and served a search warrant and dug up the location where B. Phillips told them they could find the body. And there were signs that it had been moved and new concrete poured over the top. Oh, is that where it originated? I didn't even make the connection earlier. I know he was charged for it again in for dealing in 2017, I think in August. So what do you guys think about these signatures? This is verified here as Brian A. Phillips, one of his court documents. But I think it's possible that he's going to sign it differently. You know, when I sign for, you know, a charge card or whatever, you know, paying a bill, it's never legible. My signature is not legible. It's just kind of like a scribble. This is way more legible than my signature. But I'm also an artist and I do paintings and drawings and things like that. And I would always make sure that my signature on my drawings were legible. You know, I wanted people to know, hey, this is who did it. At least be able to read my name. So I would have two different types of signatures. The one thing that stood out to me was the B. You know, the down and then the kind of the way he kind of wraps it right here. Kind of see it whip back this way right here. You kind of see that here. Mary Nordquist, the bold signature is covering the original signature beneath the boulder. I think it's the same guy. Look at the writing beneath the thick sig. Oh, I see what you mean. You're talking like the loops here seem to be present right here. But I notice he doesn't dot. There's no dots here. And here we have two. But like I said, me being an artist, I definitely would sign my work a little bit different than I would, let's say, a court document. Maybe he's even pissed off, like, all right, oh, you need to sign this. It's like, all right, you know, kind of angry. Like, look how big the B and the P are. And it's just kind of flying across. This one seems to be done a lot slower. But I don't know. In my opinion, the B's are very similar. What do you guys think? What up, Yankee Ghost? Good to see you. Farmer says, I think it's a match. I don't know. Yeah, the signature underneath, yeah, it does kind of seem more similar to this. Look, see the hooks right here? Then it appears that he went over his actual signature. Yeah, Mary. I'm kind of seeing what you mean. Like this hook here, and then there seems to be another hook there. How you doing, Misty? Hey, Brad from outside of the grid. Never legible and as many variations. I might even do it backwards. So he wants people to know he did this. Yeah, he wants people to know he did the artwork for sure. That's why he went over it again, right? And as Mary pointed out, you can kind of see his real signature behind this darker where he kind of went over his original signature to make it stand out a little bit. Okay, so with all of this going on, we have a family friend that kind of visits from out of town. We're having dinner and we're hanging out, and she's like, "Hey, you still doing this, and that, Mr. Big Shot?" I'm like, "No, I don't do that anymore." She's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Nope, I do YouTube, and I have a website, and I'm trying to start a true crime community." She's like, "How the hell did you get into that?" And I was like, "Well, the Delphi case." She's like, "Oh, I've heard of the Delphi case." She says, my friend is from Indiana, and her brother's missing." And she's like, "I can't remember his name and I don't know the details, but I'll shoot you an email." Well, she happens to be friends with Kimberly Hansen, Brian Kallenberger's sister. So she shoots me an email and gives me the information. And I just start looking at it. And lo and behold, I come upon this podcast. Well, here, maybe I'll give you guys a quick overview of the case and then we'll go into that podcast.
In a story that we've been following since March, when a Lafayette man was reported missing. Witnesses are now coming forward with new information about the day 47-year-old David Kallenberger was last seen. News 18's Alexis Moberger joins us now with an update on the investigation. Alexis?
Jeff, state troopers last saw him on I-65 near Edinburgh when his motorcycle broke down on his way to visit his sister. Kallenberger told the trooper help was on the way. Troopers returned 8 hours later and found Kallenberger's motorcycle, but no sign of him. Since he went missing, police have followed up on 165 different leads.
That's the last day I seen him. Never seen him no more.
Dean Sloan was one of the last people to see David Kallenberger after he went missing nearly 6 months ago.
But he was wringing wet of sweat.
Kallenberger's motorcycle broke down near Edinburgh on I-65 March 15th. Sergeant Jerry Holman says Kallenberger was near the mile marker for several hours. He broke down, then was seen on both sides of the interstate.
Sick will sit there for about 2 to 3 days.
Kallenberger broke down about a half mile up the road from where we are now. And neighbors say he pushed his bike up to this area, then went to neighbors, asked to borrow a phone, and even left his helmet at one of the houses.
He was wanting to call someone. He didn't say no one was coming.
Detectives say Kallenberger had a history of drug use.
He was so sweaty and hot and weird acting.
Investigators have followed up on 165 leads since the investigation started and have interviewed more than 30 people. An Edinburgh tow truck driver who didn't want to be
make sure you guys hit that thumbs.
remembers seeing a woman pick up Kallenberger in a maroon Pontiac the night he vanished.
Okay, they say they saw a woman pick him up in a maroon Pontiac. Well, Brian Phillips says that was his wife and another gentleman that eventually ended up killing him.
He said he saw my brother standing there talking to a woman in this car.
According to Holman, the car is registered in both Kallenberger's and his wife Valerie Kallenberger's names.
There's just so much that points to it being my sister-in-law.
You know, there are some suspicions that she may know a little more information than what she's given.
Okay, notice his response. He knows damn well what happened, but look how he treats the public. He takes this very seriously.
There's just so much that points to it being my sister-in-law.
You know, there are some suspicions that she may know a little more information than what she's given.
We tried calling Valerie Kallenberger for an interview.
The person you are trying to reach is not accepting calls at this time.
Police have been sweeping the area, combing fields where Kallenberger was last seen for any clues.
They had flyers that they put out there when they were here.
Expecting the worst, hoping for the best.
But as police continue to investigate, a broken family hopes for the best. David Kallenberger's sister, Kimberly Hansen, is now offering a $1,000 reward for any information that leads to his whereabouts. Kallenberger is described as 5'10", weighing 176 pounds, with a shaved head and several tattoos.
So they still haven't found his body. even though Brian Phillips says that he helped them at least load it into a back of a vehicle, and that he had information that he had was buried in a garage. And when they went to search the garage, they found nothing but freshly poured cement. So he was panicked. He wanted to get out of town. He stopped by a friend of his to get his motorcycle fixed. And there was rumors that he may have been sabotaged, because he was going around telling everybody, hey, I'm going to tell law enforcement what's been going on. I'm going to get out of town. And I think he told his sister also that he needed to leave, and that there were people that were after him. This is from Indiana. Lafayette, I think. Tippecanoe County. So after B. Phillips comes forward and talks to Holman and says, hey, look, man, I need to tell you guys what happened to David. I saw what happened. I know who did it. And I'm pretty sure I know where they buried him. Well, they come back to the home. I think sometime later, a few years goes by. The home has been renovated, painted, some new additions, freshly poured concrete. Well, they have a search warrant this time, and they dig up. And I think these photos come from Kim Hansen. I think these are his sister's photographs. Here's another one. I don't know, maybe some cadaver dogs. So if they would have found the body, boom, they would have been able to make the arrest. Search warrants would have been served, and they would have set a trial date. There's nothing they can do. But notice how they're not telling the public anything. Apparently, this is what it looked like a lot closer to the incident. This is what it looks like after it was renovated. I think this flower bed was of concern, but searched. And then the garage in the far left that's not visible in the photograph. Okay, so now I'm looking into this case, and I have no idea that B. Phillips is connected at all. I'm like, wow, Holman's lead in this investigation too. I was like, that's interesting. He's the lead in the Delphi case. So I find this podcast, and we're going to take a look at okay. Thought for a second I didn't save it. I was like, oh shit. Let me zoom it in for you guys. A little bit more. Okay, so this is a conversation between a podcaster, Kim Hansen, and B. Phillips. And B. Phillips is confessing to the crime. He's confessing to his role in the crime. He's giving names. He's talking about his drug empire and how Delphi is a big part of that empire. but he's changed. That was him back then. Hey, super chat from Phony Pin. Thank you. On the replay, but sending my continued support. Appreciate your work so much. Thank you for that, Phony. I appreciate that. Okay, so the one thing I think we can start on is, let's hear. He mentions a tarp. Let's go directly to his confession. Okay, so we'll go a little bit up here. And I don't know who he keeps calling Amy. He says Miss Amy. I don't know if that's the podcaster or what. Said, hold on. Okay. He says, Miss Amy, it's not John and it's not Luke, whatever. Whatever it is or whatever it was that I heard. Now, this is B. Phillips talking to them and explaining how he discovered who he thought was his friend wrapped in a tarp. He says, or whatever it was that I heard is coming from the garage, because you can still hear people moving around in the garage, like ruckus in the garage. So then what happened, Miss Amy, I went to the side door of the garage. I went in because the garage, that side door didn't close. Okay. So I went in the refrigerator that everybody was talking about that had the straps on it is in the middle of the garage. In the middle of the garage floor, standing upright. Okay, right in front of the refrigerator, in front of the refrigerator, there's a tarp. There's a tarp with straps wrapped around the tarp. 2 yellow ones, like the ones that you use on the flatbed trucks. Valerie and Alex Richards Valerie and Tony Richards are in the garage. What else do you see? I see the tarp on the floor. There's a body in the tarp. You could just tell by the shape. You could tell by the shape out the leg. Was there anything else besides the tarp and the body that you saw? Well, how was the body? How was the body laying there? Was it wrapped up in tarp? Yeah, wrapped up in tarp with the straps going around it, with the straps sealing the tarp shut. So it had ratchet straps on it as well. Yeah, had ratchet straps on it as well. And I said, like the kind that you use on a flatbed truck. You can tell by the way it was wrapped that it was a body. You could tell by the outline. And by the outline, okay, the outline of it. Are you pretty sure it was well? I'm not, Miss Kim. I'm not 100%. I mean, size-wise, it's right height. It's the right width. It looks like it's the right weight. It looks like, it's my size. David's not much bigger than I am, and he's not much taller than I am. The first words that come out of my mouth, Miss Amy, it's okay, Brian. You're doing good. You're doing fine. If you need to take a break, we can. For me, I'm gonna sorry, because you're doing the right thing by coming forward and you asking him to forgive for it. He did. It's already done. I knew this was going to be hard for you. Take a deep breath. You need to stand up or move around. Let's keep going. Okay. Take your time. If you need to take a break, need to take a breath or pull yourself off camera, you can. Like, let the man talk. Miss Amy, I said to Tony Richards, and I don't know who these people are, so thank you, Ziggy. I appreciate that. Amy, I said to Tony Richards, that better not be who I think is wrapped up in that tarp. And Tony Richards said to me, these are his exact words of what he said to me. He told me, he says, you know who's in that tarp. You know why he's in that tarp. And you know why we're doing this? We're not doing this for our health. Did you at any time say to him, that's David in that tarp? Miss Kim, did you ever say to him, that's David in that tarp? No, I specifically said what I said was mention David's name. No, I never used David's name. The only thing I said was that better not be who I think is wrapped up in that tarp. In other words, I'm implying that better not be my friend, right? Because you got Tony Richards and you got Valerie in the garage with me. And who else could you know? Relationship? What was Valerie and Tony's relationship? Your knowledge, as far as I knew, Miss Kim, as far as they were doing the horizontal hokey. But I mean, that wasn't she doing the horizontal hokey with? A couple minutes go by, nobody says anything. Valerie leaves. Valerie walks out the slide door, and Tony and I are only two that are in the garage. And Tony's like trying to position and shift the tarp, and he rolls the tarp, the big garage door upward. The one that rolls up, that garage, that's detached garage that's in the back of the building, Miss Kim. And this Brian Phillips kind of talks with a stutter. Kim Valor appears with the Grand Dam, and she backs the Grand Dam up to the garage. And three of us by ourselves, we put the tarp in the trunk. On the Grand Dam, that white sheet is already in the Grand Dam, and it's in the trunk, like it's fitted in, fit okay to spread, yeah. So it's spread out. We put it in the trunk, Miss Amy, and we get in the Grand Am. I'm in the back seat. Tony's driving. Valerie's in the passenger seat. So what's going through your mind at that moment? What the am I doing? What the blank am I doing? What is going on? What's happening? How the hell am I going? How the hell are we going to get out of this one without going to jail? Did you just run and call the cops? No, I never, Miss Kim. That never even crossed my mind. That being so selfish and so doped up back then, just everything that was happening, and everything was happening and happening so fast. I just wanted to get out of there, All right, let me catch up on the chat, and then we'll go ahead and search the Delphi stuff relating to this conversation. Hey, Shelly, Miranda Lee, Miss Free Spirit. Appreciate you guys. Welcome in, everybody. Okay, so I'm just going to type in Delphi. Oh, let me zoom all the way back up. Okay. Okay, you know how the methamphetamine was coming into Lafayette and was coming into Tippecanoe? Right, Tippecanoe is what I think they meant. County, and that's how everybody certain people there were having a hard time getting a handle on it. And recap again what you told me about Cuckoo and Delphi. The methamphetamine and the main sources of methamphetamine at the time were coming out of Cook and were coming out of Delphi. I used Tony Richard to get dope out of Delphi. I had my own connection to get my dope out of, I don't know, is that Kokomo? Kokomo? I'm not quite sure what he's trying to say there, unless there's a place called Cook. But it was all coming from the same place, basically, in a nutshell. It was all at the end of the day, Miss Amy. It was all coming from the same place. And that was where, I don't know for, a sad fact, but it was believed that it was all coming out of Delphi. Okay. And so David and Valerie at one point in time lived in Delphi. And then they at one point in time lived in Monticello, correct? Yeah, that's from what you and Miss Kimmy have told me. And they both did live in Delphi, and they both did live in Monticello. I never knew Miss Amy. I knew David. I met Valerie through Jay because I would deal drugs to John, and then I would deal drugs to Val. I would deal drugs to Valerie. Now, just to be clear, Jonte lived AB up above in the apartment upstairs above David, correct? But at that time that I originally met her, she lived right across the street in a real small little 2-unit duplex before she moved into an apartment upstairs from David and Valerie. I had my own connection to get my dope out of Kuko. I'm going to say Kokomo. But it was all coming from the same place, basically, in a nutshell. At the end of the day, Miss Amy, all coming out of the same place, Delphi. Okay, let's look up, because we're running out of time, let's look up Holman. Okay. Because I had a discussion the other day with Holman, with Detective Holman, about what guys were just talking about how they were talking about how the ground looked like it had been disturbed. And then they backtracked. And then I said, well, the test must have been wrong. So he was certain that he was buried in that garage. All right. Doesn't look like I'm going to have as much time as I thought. So let's go ahead and spend the next 15 minutes if you guys have any questions or any comments. So you can see how shocked I was to find Mr. B. Phillips, the guy that we found in a rabbit hole, trying to find out who made that sketch there in the middle of the screen. We said, well, who's B. Phillips? Are there any B. Phillips connected to Delphi, to February 13th? Sure enough, there was Mr. Bomb Threat himself. David's last name is Kallenberger. It's right there on the screen to the right. Well, I don't know for certain if he's dead. If you believe what B. Phillips is saying, yes, he was murdered because he was going to tell on some big methamphetamine ring. Now, a lot of people believe that the Delphi murders are drug related, possibly a revenge kill. Well, people say, no, it's not Ashley Garth. Well, just because it's not Ashley Garth doesn't mean that it's not a revenge kill. Especially when you have people like Brian Phillips saying that he was the biggest dealer and that all the drugs were coming out of Delphi. I find that very interesting. I don't know. I don't think Brian is incarcerated at this moment. This was a fairly new interview with him, and he's definitely not in jail at that time. Hey, Piper's Dream, good to see you. You too. Leave me a comment in the replay. Let me know what you think. No, he is not, Angela. Yeah, they're moving drugs. Kokomo, Monticello, Delphi, Lafayette. Don't forget he worked at Packers. Called in a bomb threat in 2016 because he was so high. Couldn't make it to work and he didn't want to lose his job. He was on his final strike. Well, he gets charged with a felony 6, false reporting, and is scheduled for a jury trial February 13th, 2017, the day the girls get murdered. In the Shauna Ho case, we know that 2 guys that were arrested the day that they were released when he killed Shauna, and their motivation was purely revenge. They were pissed off at local law enforcement, and they wanted to make them seem incompetent and inept. Sometimes the motivation is that simple, guys. Crazy people doing crazy things. But one thing we can be sure of is that this is proof that Jerry Holman may have already known who Richard Allen is and his role in this crime. and they just weren't ready to, charge him with it. Holman has known exactly who is responsible for the disappearance of David Kallenberger. Yet he's not told the public, he's not told the family, and he hasn't made an arrest. Yeah, Hiawatha. Who is Tony Richard? I didn't spend really any time trying to figure out who that was, but the reason I'm sharing this information with you guys is not to accuse anybody, but just give you guys to look at. You know what I mean? There's a lot that we don't know about this case, and we've assumed so much about the motive, about Keegan Kline, about other actors. Some of you are probably still caught on like the Ron Logan stuff. But when in fact, the information that we don't know is because we're not really searching for it. When they mentioned Anthony Schatz and Keegan Kline, the majority of people back then assumed that the case was closed. They said, oh, well, it's definitely Keegan Kline. I told everybody, don't jump on that. Let's look at all the ins and outs and the details. And I think the same goes for Richard Allen. They kept the tip line open. They made us feel like others were involved from the get-go. By the way, they sealed the PCA. They arrested Richard Allen with the same information that they had on the 15th. The knowledge that he was there that day. The timeline. I think they were hoping that his family would have come forward, like his wife or his friends. I think they were really hoping to say, well, that's Richard Allen. And with that information, I think they could have made the arrest. Or they were hoping to get their hands on somebody who was more involved in the physical part of the crime. Maybe there was another man that had a blade. Yeah, we can always follow up on this. We're probably going live for members only. I don't think it's going to be today because we're going live on Channel 2 to cover Joe Biden addressing the nation. That'll be at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time if you guys want to go hang out there for some political talk. But I think we'll do the members tomorrow, and we can follow up on this. And I have another rabbit hole that people are requesting that we touch on. So it should be an interesting one. A lot of Delphi stuff in this meeting. So. But I think we're going to start wrapping it up here. I thought Tony Richards' run is dope. Yep, at a Delphi. But I think it's just strange that he mentioned that David was living in Delphi too. So I wonder if he was using David to run drugs too. Did I search what? Granny of 11 says podcaster case by case. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where I got the transcript. I would search case by case David Kallenberger. There might be 2 or 3 videos. I think it's the longest one. Might even want to type Brad Phillips. Or not Brad, Brian. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Welcome in, Veronica. Shelley says, I heard about 6 months before Richard Allen arrest that law enforcement knew who was BG, but not enough evidence to arrest him yet. I blew it off like, yeah, right. The BAM Raw got arrested. And bam, Richard Allen got arrested. Yeah, we've been speculating about that for years. It just didn't make sense. And then when we found out about Dan Doolin and the fact that Richard Allen came forward and they wouldn't really tell us, they wouldn't really tell us about that. Oh, we hope one day we'll be able to explain it to you. And then we wanted to beat up Dan Doolin because he was so stupid. Like, how do you let the guy who you're now saying 100% is the bridge guy go free for 6.5 years when he came forward? Well, I think now we know. Well, at least we know it's a possibility that they had eyes on him from day 2 or from the moment that he came forward or even before that. Hey, Red Queen, welcome in. No worries, Veronica. We'll catch you. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. We're not sure about the motive. And the knowledge that we've been gaining and the things that we've been learning about typology, killer typology, we know that some killers will stage a crime scene and make it appear that it was sexually motivated when in fact it was some type of a hit, or it was some kind of jealousy, or it just psychopathy. They targeted this person and they didn't really have a reason. They were just selected. Wow. So very strange. Good to see you, Miss Thang. Kelly O, welcome in. All right, guys. For those of you who are subscribed to Chan 2, I'll see you in a few. I'm going to grab a bite to eat. And members, I think we'll go ahead and meet at around noontime, 12 Mountain Standard Time tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Take care.